Simon Young here from Auckland, New Zealand, from Sciengage. Got a question for Alan and anyone else who wants to answer. In New Zealand and perhaps in Australia, the budgets are pretty small. So when you say doing pay-per-click advertising and start with a small budget, what does that mean? What sort of numbers does small look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, if you want to start a paid search campaign in China, so how much budget you should put in, right? So in my presentation, I mentioned you have two channels to tap into China for search marketing through key channels or SME. So if you want to start as a key account, I mean, it usually starts with 2 million Chinese RMB per year. Yeah, so that's usually start with this number. Yeah, but of course you can start minimum is around the 500,000 Chinese RMB per year. So that's minimum requirements. But usually for the campaigns around 2 million RMBs, so that's good enough to start. Yeah, but for SMEs accounts, those much smaller. Right? For SME accounts, I mean you can start with something like 10,000 RMB, so that's okay. Yeah, but really if you want to see some results for SME companies in Australia and New Zealand, so you probably want to try at least something around, I mean, 100,000 to 200,000 RMB, yeah, for the year to at least to see some results, right? And also, if you have limited budget, the question would be where you should put the money into, right? It's either Baidu or some others. So my suggestion at this moment, so if you have limited money, you can try Baidu and Sogou. So Baidu is something you definitely have to try. Even you put very little money, you have to try Baidu, right? So you can't ignore Baidu completely, yeah. But Sogou is usually cheaper. So if you do have very small budget, so you try Baidu some bit, maybe half, right? Another half put on Sogou. So in terms of CPC, Sogou sometimes is half or 60% of Baidu's CPC price. Yeah, so that's general numbers. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thanks Alan, thanks Simon. Anyone else? Any questions for our speakers? Yes, please.
Kate from Bridge Climb Sydney. My question's for Mark. Just in terms of what you're talking about with e-commerce and the sites that you mentioned, such as Elong and Ctrip, we've just recently launched a .cn website that does have capabilities to take bookings. At the moment, we're not seeing any bookings come through, but we're seeing a lot of traffic to the site. Should our expectations be that this will be the general situation for the next few years until will Chinese people learn to trust websites like ours, or will they just continue to look at them for information and then go back to trusted websites to make the booking?
It could be down to two things. One is maybe your site, I don't know if you're accepting the right type of payments, if, as was said earlier, if your site has the right buttons in the right places. And so it may be your site, but it's probably more likely to be that as you kind of hit the nail on the head, they don't trust sites they're not aware of, they're not familiar. There's a lot of online fraud in China, so they're much more comfortable with sites they're familiar with and sites that they've used before and they trust.
I have one possible answer.
Oh, sorry, I just one more thing. There is definitely increasing cross-nation commerce. It's still tiny, but it's growing. There's more and more consumers are buying directly from an overseas website, and so you're increasingly going to get that as they become more confident, but it's still a very small percentage, but it is growing quickly.
Is your payment gateway a credit card, PayPal? Because the Chinese don't really use that much credit card.
We're really close to getting China You Can Pay accepted on this platform, and it's not at the moment. So we understand that there's some barriers for them to do, but even if we get to the point where when we accept China You Can Pay, I just didn't know what our expectations should be.
You will have to be very low, because the thing is that most of the time people just pay with their debit card. Even when it comes to e-commerce, people don't pay by the credit card first. It's cash on delivery. They like the product they receive, then they pay for it in cash. It's just that I think the payment expectations is something you all have to take note of. And the thing is, I do have a suggestion for you. Since you all have so much traffic coming to the site, even if there's no conversion, at least create some channels for them to leave some feedback. as well as whether they want to be part of a newsletter or something, so that you can still recapture that when your Alipay payment gateway is set up.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Castro. Next question. Good. Thanks. Thank you.
My name is Tess. I'm from University of Ballarat and from a region university. And in the future, we'll be called Federation University Australia. So we're going through the rebranding exercise. My question is for Castro. Yeah, because you mentioned that in your presentation that we should targeting at a younger age. But from our industry point of view, because we education, international education is regarded as not only just a consuming product, it's an investment as well. So usually the decisions made by senior members of the family, parents, grandparents, or maybe both sides, and children may make a decision, but it's not. Children are not usually the decision makers. So what is your suggestion or your insights that for our industry?
Okay, I'm just going to give my perspective of this. Partly because of the single child policy, the millennials in China is probably one of the most privileged consumer class across the world. They have a lot more weight even over their elders. That's why they can even influence the brand preferences of their parents and grandparents. They are strong-willed, incredibly stubborn, and seriously, I would not want to have kids after spending so much time with them. But the key thing is this. These millennials, outwardly they may appear to be very independent. They're highly insecure creatures. They want to stand up. They don't want to stand out, but they still want to be socially accepted by their friends. So they don't want to end up like that gothic chick that ends up eating lunch by herself every day. So for them, whatever decisions they make, be it brand or when it comes to their lifestyle choices, or even when it comes to studies, it's a choice, it's a decision that must be vetted and approved by their friends, not by their parents. So most of the time, they'll come to consensus, this is school I want to go, and then they'll tell the parents, and the parents will just let them do it. And if you're going on the rebranding thing, there's one thing I need to let you know. When it comes to this millennial group, they are very interested in brands that stand for social good. Ideally, the branding should also incorporate a social act, because branding is more than just changing logo and tagline these days. Branding is an act. And as long as the act is in the sphere or landscape that they like it's something altruistic or giving back to society, you actually can better target the millennials that way. Hope I answered your question.
Great. Thanks, Tessa. Thanks, Castro. Sure.
Could I add
Yeah.
to that? I've done some work with a number of foreign universities in China, and I think there are three things that Chinese parents actually do have a large influence over. It's what you study, where you study it, and then what you do with it afterwards, which company you might work for. And I think that what Kestrel said is largely true. Yes, they're looking to what their peers are doing and saying about which universities to go to, but they're also looking to what their parents say. And if their parents are not aware of your university or don't think it ranks very highly, they tend to push it down and push them towards other universities. So I think being able to communicate and get your messages through to the older generation is as important. So I think for something like a university, it's important to be on social media, but it's probably equally important to be in traditional media, which is what their parents are going to be reading and seeing on TV, etc.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Okay, one more question. Last question.
Yeah, over here. For Alan. Alan, you talked a fair amount of Baidu and factors, the ranking factors involved. Then you spoke about 360 and Sogou, the new emerging search platforms. I'm just wondering, are they clone type platforms, or are they doing something differently which is driving their growth?
Yeah, I mean, the basic search principles are similar, but the way they, I mean, like 360 and Sogou, they got the traffic is different from Baidu. I mean, as many of you may know, 360 is the largest free security software in China. So it has 80%, more than 80% of the penetration rate for security software on PC. And they use their security software to push their browser download. So they have the IE-based or Chrome-based browser. So they got 25% of the browser market of China. And they used to have Google as the default search engine for their own browser, but they switched to their own search engine since August last year. So that's where they got their traffic from. And Sogou as well. Sogou actually, they own the largest Chinese input system. Because in order to input Chinese on your computer, you need a Chinese input system. And Sogou owns 90% of that market share. So they use their Chinese input system to push up their browser downloads as well. They also have IE-based browser. So they got about 15 to 20% of the share. So they also make the browser and their Sogou search engine as their default browser. So that's where Sogou got their most of their traffic coming from before. But in the future, of course, because Tencent merged their Soso into Sogou, so Tencent will give their traffic from QQ platform, from WeChat to Sogou. So Sogou should have more of that coming traffic in the future. And also, actually, they are all testing something new. If we're talking about, apart from the basic algorithm, they're kind of similar. But on top of that, 360 and Sogou is trying something new. For example, if you go to 360 and search for something, and they have something showed up as a tomato. So every website, they give you a tomato mark. So if it's a red tomato, it means, because they have a user community behind that. So actually, it's a real human review for your websites. So they did build a community along with their search engine. So if your websites got, for example, more than 80% of the people think you are good, write some good reviews on your search results page, it will show a red potato. If you have the people who review your websites is below 60% as a good website, you will get a green potato. And in the middle, there's a yellow potato. So that's something 360 was trying to do. And that will affect the click-through rate and also maybe some rankings a little bit. So actually, each of the search engines, they are trying something slightly different from Baidu.